سلام به بینندگان عزیز. برنامه نان گل سرخ رو نگاه میکنید، مجله اجتماعی سیاسی که روی کانال جدید پخش میشه. من مریم نمازی ام و این برنامه را با همکار بسیار عزیزم فریبرز پویا
با سلام از من
بهتون تقدیم میکنم. برنامه این هفته و سوالی که میخوایم این هفته مطرح کنیم اینه که آیا همجنسگرایان امکان حقوق برابر در جامعه مثل ایران یا کشورهای خاورمیانه و آفریقای شمالی دارن یا خیر؟ و جالب اینجاست که یه مصاحبه خیلی جالبی با تری ساندرسون، رئیس سازمان سکولار بریتانیا داریم که 9 کتاب در رابطه با حقوق همجنسگرایان نوشته. مصاحبه با ایشون داریم و در ضمن مثل همیشه اخبار شوکه آور هفته و در ضمن فتوای احمقانه این هفته را براتون تقدیم میکنیم. اما قبل از اینکه بریم سراغ برنامه‌مون، اول یک کلیپ کوتاهی با هم نگاه کنیم در رابطه با موضوع این برنامه. با ما باشید.
دستاوردهای جنبش حقوق همجنسگرایان در بریتانیا و باقی اروپا نمونه بارز دستیابی به تغییرات عظیم در مدت نسبتاً کوتاه در نتیجه انقلابات اجتماعی است. همجنسگرایان موفق شدند تمام حقوق قانونی شهروندان اروپا را به دست آورند. با این وجود همجنسگرایان هنوز در بسیاری از کشورهای جهان مورد تبعیض قرار گرفته و حتی در کشورهای تحت قوانین شریعه از جمله ایران تهدید به مرگ می‌شوند.
به نظرم این سوالی که آیا همجنسگرایان امکان حق حقوق برابر و مساوی مثل توی اروپا توی جامعه مثل ایران میتونن داشته باشن یا نه، به نظر من مشخصه تحت قوانین اسلامی امکان پذیر نیست. به خاطر اینکه وقتی هم تو اروپا نگاه میکنیم یا توی بریتانیا برای مثال که مصاحبه کننده‌ای که باش مصاحبه کردیم بعداً بیشتر مطرح میکنه، میبینیم که هر چقدر حق و حقوق همجنسگرایان، زنان، اقلیت‌های مذهبی، آزاداندیشان، آتیسا هر چقدر بیشتر حق و حقوق داشتن، این مترادف بوده با سکولاریزه شدن جامعه. یعنی یه دولت یا قوانین اسلامی اجازه نمیده یا مذهبی اجازه نمیده که همجنسگرایان حق و حقوق برابر داشته باشن.
منم فکر می‌کنم صحبتی که می‌کنین درسته. تحت قوانین اسلامی حقوق اجتماعی، حقوق سیاسی، حقوق مدنی بخش‌های متفاوت جامعه طبیعتاً قابل اجرا نیست، ولی این بدین معنی نیست که جامعه نمیتونه برای این حقوق مبارزه بکنه. و در واقع ما اینو میتونیم ببینیم که به خصوص توی جمهوری اسلامی با اینکه قوانین شریعه و قوانین اسلامی حاکمه، مبارزه برای همین حقوق پایمال شده تحت این قوانین ادامه داره و یک نوع همبستگی تو جامعه داره به وجود میاد بین کسایی که مورد تبعیض قوانین اسلامی قرار میگیرن. شما وقتی حقوق جامعه میبینه که حقوق زنان به این شکل پایمال میشه، در کنارش میتونه ببینه که حقوق همجنسگرایان هم داره پایمال میشه، حقوق کودکان پایمال میشه، حقوق کارگران پایمال میشه و یک همبستگی طبیعی به وجود میاره و در ضمن جامعه به نظر من داره متوجه میشه بیشتر و بیشتر که همجنسگرایان به حقوق همجنسگرایان رو باید به رسمیت بشناسه و در واقع رسمی شناختن این حقوق از طرف احزاب سیاسی اپوزیسیون داره شکل میگیره و این یکی از دستاوردهای این جنبش آزادیخوانه در ایرانه و به نظر من این آینده روشنی رو برای این ترسیم میکنه.
یعنی دقیقاً حتی توی جامعه مثل ایران، خب وقتی وضعیت زنان رو نگاه میکنیم میبینیم در این حال زنانی هستن که میان بی‌حجاب میشن و علیه اعدام مبارزه هست، مبارزات مختلفی هست که این محدودیت‌های قانون و قوانین اسلامی رو عقب میندازه، روش فشار میذاره و اینم در رابطه با حقوق همجنسگرایان هم میشه دید. یعنی واقعا تعداد زیادی همجنسگرا تو ایران هست. میدونیم که چند وقت پیش محمود احمدی نژاد گفته بود که هیچ همجنسگرایی تو ایران وجود نداره، ولی خب مشخصه که اینطور نیست. همجنسگرایان همه جای دنیا وجود دارن. تو ایران هم اتفاقا یه آمار خیلی جالبی اومده که یه تحقیقاتی شده برای خود مجلس جمهوری اسلامی و با 142,000 جوان و شاگرد مدرسه باشون یه آماری گرفتن و از این آمار دیدن که 80% دختران که ازدواج نکردن دوست پسر داشتن، رابطه جنسی داشتن و 17% از این 142,000 نفر همجنسگرای بودن.
خیلی جالبه به نظر من. خود جمهوری اسلامی هم نمیتونه این رو رد بکنه و نشون میده با اینکه علاوه قانونی نمیتونه قبول بکنه این حرفا، ولی واقعیت جامعه ایران رو نمیتونه رد کنه. ولی یه مسئله مهم به نظر من اینه که حقوق همجنسگرایان خیلی رابطه مستقیمی با حقوق زنان داره، به خاطر اینکه کنترل همجنسگرایی تو هر جامعه‌ای دخالت توی وضعیت جنسیت آدمه و جنبش زنان باید توجه خیلی خاصی رو به نظر من، یا جنبش عمومی برای حقوق جامعه باید توجه خاصی به حقوق همجنسگرایان بکنه و بدون این رسمیت شناختن این حق جامعه نمیتونه راحت آزاد باشه.
نظر شما در این رابطه چیه؟ الان بریم پای صحبت تری ساندرسون. یه مسابقه واقعا خیلی قشنگی باش داریم در رابطه نه فقط مثلا نیاز جدایی مذهب از دولت برای به دست آوردن حقوق برابر برای همجنسگرایان، بلکه چطوری کسی که همجنسگراست میتونه زندگی خوبی داشته باشه، زندگی خوشبختی داشته باشه و مادر پدرها چجوری میتونن به بچه هاشون که همجنسگران چه رابطه باید باشون داشته باشن. حتما به این گوش بدید، با ما باشید. Hello, Terry Sanderson. Welcome to our program.
Hello.
It's a great pleasure to have you, and especially with the wonderful work you do with the National Secular Society, an organization which I personally am in love with, particularly given the fact that it's well known for being a bulldog and very often aggressive. What's your point of view on people who say that?
Well, we're not aggressive. We're very rational. I mean, aggressive seems to suggest that you're out of control, but all our campaigns are actually very carefully thought through. And we are a bit militant, more militant than some other secularist groups, but that is, I think, is necessary sometimes in order to make people listen to you, because secularism is an issue that religious organizations and religious leaders would love you not to talk about. They would love you not to think about taking their privileges away. So occasionally you do have to shout, and that gets us a reputation of being aggressive. But when we do shout, we're shouting common sense, and we're not shouting for the sake of it.
I mean, definitely. What do you think of people who very often equate, let's say, militant secularism with religious extremism?
Well, it's ridiculous, but I understand their motivation for doing it. They misunderstand what secularism really is. And secularism is not about taking their religion away from them. It's not about doing down their churches or their mosques or their temples. It's nothing to do with that. It's about giving everybody the opportunity to believe whatever they want to and not believe if they don't want to. And that is a very rare commodity in many parts of the world. In America, you have a secular constitution, so in effect, all Americans are secularists. And they haven't had the religious wars that Europe has had and that the Middle East is having now, because they're protected from one religion taking over the government. And I think that is brilliant. It was a stroke of genius when the founding fathers came up with that idea. So I always say, it worked for America, it can work for other places too. And that's what we would like to see.
In a sense, you talk about the fact that it is necessary also to protect particularly minorities, women, and free thinkers in any given society. And, what's interesting is that you came to secularism from your gay rights activism perspective. I've seen that you've written more than 9 books on this issue, which is amazing. What's the link? Why do you think there is a link, isn't there?
There is. It's because I think that nowadays in Europe, the only real opponents of gay rights are religions. So we have to give focus to that and why they have the power to interfere with people's private lives, why they want to control people's private lives, not just gay people's, but women, anybody who does something that they think they shouldn't be doing, and they want to control us. And I don't think that the church has any right to be in our bedrooms. That's why I'm a secularist, because that's just one aspect of secularism, but it's an important one because churches just love trying to control you.
I mean, one of the books you read, which I found very interesting, is the one that's titled "The Happy Homosexual."
How to be a happy homosexual.
How to be a happy homosexual, exactly. And in it, you have some interesting advice and information for people. And obviously, a lot of our viewers are going to be in Iran, but I'd like you to go through some of them. One was the issue of not being invisible, how that really helps someone.
Yeah, I wrote that book originally at the very beginning of the gay rights movement back in the early 70s, when it was very difficult for people to be honest about who they were. Homosexuality had only just been decriminalised in Britain, so people were still very wary about being open about it. But a movement formed about young people who were fed up with having to hide, fed up with being denied the right to be who they were and to love how they wanted to love. And this movement grew and became so effective. It was just, I mean, what has happened in the 30, 40 years since that movement first emerged is that we've won everything. In Britain, we have everything that everybody else has. Gays are now completely legally recognised. There are still some people who don't like the idea, still some people who are homophobic. We'll never get rid of that. There are people who've got prejudices about all kinds of things. So I'm not bothered, really, that there are some people who don't like gay people. But I do think that it's important for the mental health of gay people that they are able to live their lives fully. And if that means having a partner of the same sex, I think they should be entitled to do that. Fortunately, we've won that argument, and now gay marriage is available, not only here, but all across Europe and in some states of America too. So we have this wonderful progress that's been made over those 40 years, quite incredible. When I started out in the gay rights movement in the 1970s, I would have put a bet on, I put my life savings on a bet that we would not achieve gay marriage in my lifetime.
And look how it hasn't been that long when you think about it, isn't it?
For such a social revolution, it's been achieved in a very short time. But there we are. It's because it was just. And the churches and the mosques resisted every step of the way. They tried to defeat every legal reform that was brought to Parliament. They failed ultimately. They succeeded on occasions, you know, they won battles, but ultimately we won the war. And I think that is an example that secularists can now take to heart. Social change is possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a million questions that are coming to mind right now. If I can just focus on this issue for a second, I mean, what sorts of things do you think could translate in countries like the Middle East and North Africa, where, you know, homosexuality is considered a crime, it's punishable by death in some instances? I know they're not obviously very similar situations, but I'm sure there are some lessons that can be learned and taught.
Yeah, there are, and unfortunately, there's no easy way around it. Somebody's got to be brave and take the first steps. And I know that they are beginning to do that in Iran, that you have a nascent gay movement beginning to emerge. But it's very difficult because it's a different culture. It's a culture dominated by religion, a disapproving religion, a lethal religion for some gay people. So, you know, taking those first steps from the closet is a very different prospect in Iran than it would be in Britain. When I did it for the first time in 1969, it was relatively easy. But somebody to do that in Iran for the first time, it is dangerous.
One of the things I wonder, there's so many parallels. We often, with people coming out as atheists, for example, and ex-Muslims, we often talk about parallels with the gay rights movement, coming out of the closet. And do you think that maybe social media is going to have a positive impact on helping people come out as gay?
It can do, but ultimately it's a personal thing. You cannot do it electronically. You know, you can make the announcement that you're homosexual, but in the end, it's your mum and dad who matter. It's your brothers and sisters, your friends, your work colleagues. They're the ones who have to accept and to make you a whole person who's free. And I think you can't do that by social media. You could send them an email, and I know some people have done that, or write a letter, but it's not the same as sitting down with mum and dad and telling them and having it out and getting through the difficulties and the bad reactions, because you can. And you do, and it happens all the time. Just yesterday, I noticed on YouTube there was a video of a young man who'd set up a camera in his bedroom, then invited his mum in and said, "Mum, I'm gay." Mum had said, "I love you still, and nothing will stop me loving you." She said, "By the way, I've got something to tell you. I've got a girlfriend." So, all kinds of things can happen on this journey. Sometimes it's difficult and hard. Sometimes it's very easy. You don't know till you do it. But the reward is that you have a full, honest, open life that you can live with your partner. And I think that is so important, because I've seen so many people go through lives denying and refusing to come out of the closet, living a lonely old age where they've never experienced the wonderful feelings that loving another person bring. So nobody should deny themselves that. And even if you have to do it because of cultural circumstances, if you have to do it secretly and behind closed doors, try to do it, because you'll be a better, more whole, happier person. So although my book was called How to Be a Happy Homosexual, I think it would be more honest to say how not to be an unhappy homosexual. The way to be unhappy is to keep on hiding and denying and refusing and saying, "No, I'm not." That is the way to make yourself miserable.
You also in your book talk about how parents can deal with gay children, and I think that might be interesting and important for people who live in Iran.
Well, in my book, which I called How to Cope If Your Child is Gay, the first thing I said on the front page was, do not do anything precipitous. Don't kick your child out. Don't sort of abandon them and tell them to leave the house and never darken our doors again. Don't do anything like that. Wait. Give it some time to cool. Start to think. Start to investigate. Start to question. But don't do anything precipitous that is going to end up with your family splitting apart, sometimes never to be repaired. There was a wonderful film that was made in America about fundamentalist Christians who had gay children and how they reacted to it. Almost all of them had rejected their children. One woman had sort of said, I can't cope with this because my church says no. And she had told her daughter, "You'll have to go. I don't want you in the house." Her daughter had gone away and written her a letter saying, "I'm really sorry that you've done this, because I still love you and I will always love you, and I'm here when you want me." And the mother had screwed this letter up and thrown it in the bin. But then she produced it, she'd unscrewed it, and she said, "This is the letter." She said, "My daughter hanged herself almost as soon as she'd written this." She said, "And I will never forgive myself for that." So don't do anything that is going to maybe provoke some tragic circumstance. Wait, you still love your kid. It may be not quite the kid you thought you had, but he's still there, or she's still there, and you can still love them, but you have to work through it, and sometimes it's hard work. Sometimes it's full of ignorance, misinformation, people telling you the wrong thing. Find out for yourself, and find out through your child, because you want to go on loving. You don't want to hate people. That's no way to live. You want to love your children, and you can love them. It doesn't have to be the end if they tell you they're gay. You can continue to have a good, loving relationship with them.
I mean, at the end, we have to come to the understanding, as we have on many other issues in the world, that there is nothing wrong with being gay. I mean, what do you think about these attempts at converting gay people? And
yeah, I mean, again, it's religion. Religion doesn't want gay people to exist, so it tries to make them not exist. It pretends that it can pray people out or counsel them out of their sexual orientation. It's ridiculous. They cannot do it. And it's failed over and over again. And in fact, some of the leaders of the ex-gay movement in America, where all this originated, have come out now and said, no, it doesn't work. And I want to apologize to all the people we've tortured over the years, trying to persuade them out of their sexuality, making them feel even more guilty about it, making them miserable. It didn't work. It doesn't work. We've given up. And I think that's important.
You mentioned something about loving yourself. We're running out of time. I want to ask you one more question after that. So if you can just talk about that as well briefly, on how important that is.
I think self-hate is very easy for gay people. They don't like the idea that they're different, particularly when they're on their own. They're in the closet. They've got no support, nobody to tell them positive things. They hate themselves. And so this comes out in all kinds of strange ways. It comes out in maybe persecuting other gay people to try and deflect a suspicion. And I think you have to love yourself, but you have to love yourself as a gay person if that's what you are. You know, sometimes it takes a long time to come to terms with it. But if you don't love yourself as a gay person, you will hate yourself. And I think it's most important to work through that. Again, very difficult for some people, very easy for others.
Last question is, you mentioned all the advances of the gay rights movement in Europe and the West in general. Do you think that movement has a responsibility to the gay rights, the burgeoning, the nascent gay rights movement in Iran, the Middle East and North Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is where attention is beginning to turn now. We've done our achievements, we've got what we wanted. There's nothing else we can campaign for in Europe, really, except social acceptance. But that's something that's done on an individual basis. The focus is now turning to foreign persecution of gay people. And there's a lot of campaigning being done in the EU, in the United Nations, and in local gay groups who are trying desperately to support these emerging gay movements in places where it is very difficult and very dangerous to make this move towards an organised movement. We hope we can support them, but we're up against huge odds that were never there for the British gay movement.
But like you never know, maybe in our lifetime.
Maybe.
Thank you very much, Terry.
All right, thanks.
امیدوارم از این مصاحبه خوشتون اومده باشه. تری سندرسون واقعا مسائل خیلی مهمی رو مطرح میکنه. یکیش مسئله همین که ارتباطی که و رابطه و حمایتی که باید ما از همجنسگرایان نشون بدیم و در ضمن خود همجنسگرایان چه نیازی وجود داره که خود به رسمیت بشناسن جنسیت خودشونو و در ضمن دوستان و آشنایشون چجوری باید حمایت کنن از کسی که هستن. این خیلی کمک میکنه برای اینکه یه نفر بتونه واقعا زندگی انسانی تری داشته باشه، حتی تحت قوانین اسلامی.
آره، به نظر من خیلی مسئله جالبی رو و مصاحبه خیلی جالب بود. به نظر من باید به تری سندرسون تبریک گفت برای این مصاحبه خیلی گرم و آگاهگرانه‌ای. به نظر من مسائل مطرح کرد که به شدت انسانی و نشون داد که رابطه بین جامعه و حقوق همجنسگرایان چقدر اهمیت داره. به چه زبان ساده و زیبایی به نظر من اینو ترسیم کرد. یه نکته برای من حائز اهمیت بود وقتی مثال میزنه و میگه که مادر یا پدری که فهمیدن بچهشون همجنسگراست و این خبر رو شنیدن چطوری نباید طرد بکنن، باید صبر کنن، فکر بکنن و در واقع یک آغوششون رو باز کنن به خاطر اینکه بچه خودشون رو بشناسن، به رسمیت بشناسن و چه روابط انسانی میتونه وجود داره. به نظر من مصاحبه تریس اندرسن یکی از زیباترین مصاحبه بوده که من در مورد حقوق همجنسگرایان شنیدم.
یه مسئله مهم دیگه هم که مطرح میکنه، یعنی خیلی جالبه، میگه که مثلا فکر نمیکرده توی زندگی خودش بتونه این نوع حق و حقوق رو توی اروپا ببینه. یعنی میگفت اگر همه پولام هم شرط میکردم فکر نمیکردم که به چنین موقعیتی برسیم که همه حقوق برابر داریم الان توی جامعه مثل انگلیس. ولی خب مشخصه که این واقعیت برای خیلی‌ها توی سطح دنیا وجود نداره و اهمیت این که جنبش همجنسگرایان توی غرب که دفاع کنن از جنبش همجنسگرایی در ایران و خاورمیانه و غیره، و در ضمن نقش مهمی که همه ما میتونیم ایفا کنیم در دفاع از این حق واقعا پایه‌ای و انسانی. به پایان این بخش بحثمون رسیدیم. حتما نظرات خودتون رو برامون بفرستین، چون میدونیم که خیلی ها هستن که من خونده بودم یه مقاله‌ای که الان واقعا کسی نیست تو ایران که یه دوست یا آشنایی نداشته باشه که همجنسگراست و ندونه که اینطوریه و خیلی ها الان بیشتر آگاهن روی این مسئله و اهمیت این موضوع رو میشناسن. حتما اتفاقاتی که برای خودتون افتاده و یا نظراتتون رو در این مورد برامون بفرستین، با همون تماس بگیرین. خیلی مشتاق شنیدن از شما هستیم. اما بریم الان به سراغ اخبار واقعا شوکه آور این هفته که مسلم زیاده. میخواستیم در این بخش برنامه 3 تا اخبار مهم رو براتون مطرح کنیم. یکی اینه که داعش اخیراً یک زن فعال حقوق بشر و یک وکیل رو اعدام کرد. اسمش هست سمیرا صلیح النعیمی در موصول و دلیلش این بود که توی فیسبوک انتقاد کرده بود از داعش. در اخبار دیگه ما میبینیم توی ایران 4 کارگر رازی پتروشیمی به خاطر دفاع از حق کارگر، دفاع از اعتصاب و اعتراض کارگران 6 ماه زندانی گرفتن و در ضمن به شلاق محکوم شدن، به 50 شلاق که هیچی جز شکنجه نیست. و در ضمن خبر از سهیل عربی میاد، یه جوان 30 ساله که به خاطر به گفته جمهوری اسلامی مسخره کردن محمد الان حکم اعدام گرفته. واقعا انقدر شنیه وقتی این اخبارا رو آدم میشنوه و چقدر غیر انسانی بودن قوانین شریعه به کل دنیا نشون داده میشه.
شما تفاوتی بین داعشی که تو موصول تو حکومت هست و جمهوری اسلامی که تو ایرانه میتونیم ببینیم. واقعا هیچ تفاوتی نیست، از یک جنبشن. ولی شلاق زدن کارگرا منو به یاد برده هایی بود که توی آمریکا قبل از انقلاب توی آمریکا که وقتی توی مزارع کار میکردن یا در میرفتن اعتراض میکردن به شرایطشون، صاحب برده‌دارا میوردن توی به شکل علنی اینا رو جلوی برده های دیگه شلاق میزدن که درس بهشون یاد بدن. دقیقاً جمهوری اسلامی داره همین کار میکنه. جمهوری اسلامی یه حکومت برده داره و جامعه ایران رو جزو برده های خودش حساب میکنه و واقعاً بعد شرم جامعه است که شرمی رو به وجود آورده تو جامعه ایران که کارگر رو شلاق بزنه. این یکی از فجیح ترین وضعیتیه که به جامعه ایران جمهوری اسلامی به وجود آورده برای جامعه ایران و باید به شدت محکوم بشه.
به شدت باید محکوم بشه و ما هممون چه تو ایران چه تو خارج کشور باید حمایت کامل خودمون رو به این 4 نفر و در ضمن به تمام کسانی که حکم اعدام و یا شلاق و سنگسار رو گرفتن. اما الان بریم پای فتوای احمقانه این هفته. در فتوای احمقانه این هفته، این دفعه از مصر و یکی از رهبران سلفیستا که ملام هست یه فتوا داده، اسمش از یاسر برهامی و گفته که اگر یک مرد جونش در خطر خواهد افتاد، اگر که بره سعی کنه همسری که داره بهش تجاوز میشه بره سعی کنه کمکش کنه، بهتر این کارو نکنه، چون فرق زیادی با اینکه جیبشو بدزدن نداره. و از اون زاویه یک کسی از مسئولین وزارت مذهب توی مصر گفته این فتوا اصلا مغایرت داره با شریعه، به خاطر اینکه مرد باید بره از ناموس خودش حتی اگرم کشته بشه دفاع کنه. دقیقاً هر دو این اومد مثلا درستش کنه، معلومه که هر دوتاشون یه دیدگاه به زن دارن و همیشه هم واقعا انگار این که فقط کالای مرد و صاحبشه.
و دقیقاً، ولی نکته که اهمیت داره مردم به این اراجیف مذهبی که به شکل فتوا بسته‌بندی میشه تو جامعه پخش میشه اهمیت نمیدن. آدما برابرن و از همدیگه دفاع خواهند کرد و این مردم توی مصر هم و توی تمام دنیا به این فتواهای احمقانه اینا اهمیت نخواهند داد.
و فکر کنم هیچکی به جز این که بهشون بگه فتوای احمقانه اسم دیگه بهشون نخواهد داد. به هر حال رسیدیم به انتهای برنامه این هفتمون. امیدوارم از این برنامه خوشتون اومده باشه. ما مثل همیشه مشتاق شنیدن از شما هستیم. حتما برنامه ما رو به دوستاتون، به آشنایتون معرفی کنین و تا هفته آینده امیدوارم واقعا هفته خیلی خوبی داشته باشید. تا بعد.